Bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'être venu. Ça me fait plaisir d'être ici en Colombie-Britannique. Surtout de me réveiller ce matin pour apprendre que Justin Trudeau annonce qu'il est un homme changé. Il est un homme changé. Après 8 ans de Justin Trudeau, qui n'en vaut pas le coup. Il est maintenant un homme changé. J'ai souligné il y a 2 ans le problème d'inflation qu'il gonflait avec ses énormes déficits et l'impression de l'argent. Puis finalement, après des années où j'ai discuté le problème, il a avoué que le problème d'inflation frappait les Canadiens. Et il a même mis une pause sur la taxe carbone pour certaines personnes dans certaines régions où ces sondages étaient en train de tomber. Puis après,
were so unfavorable to him. And the fact that Justin Trudeau has doubled the cost of housing.
Après des années, il y a eu une retraite de ses ministres pour avouer que ça coûte trop cher louer un appartement ou payer son hypothèque et qu'il allait changer là-dessus aussi. Ce matin, il avoue qu'il a causé une énorme crise de vol d'auto. Les vols d'auto ont augmenté de plus de 30% depuis l'arrivée au pouvoir de Justin Trudeau, qui a permis des criminels qui volent nos autos d'être dans les rues, d'être libérés automatiquement. Et il avoue que c'est un problème et il va avoir une grande réunion des activistes, bureaucrates et politiciens pour s'y adresser. Et ce matin, il avoue qu'il a causé une crise dans le programme des étudiants étrangers. Après avoir augmenté la population 2 ou 3 fois plus rapidement qu'on augmente l'approvisionnement de logements, Justin Trudeau avoue que c'est trop et il va couper les chiffres, il va renverser ses propres politiques lorsque l'un de ses ministres dit que le programme, après 8 ans de Justin Trudeau, est hors de contrôle. Donc, Justin Trudeau recule sur l'inflation, recule sur le logement, recule sur la criminalité et recule sur l'immigration. Ils veulent que vous sachiez que c'est un nouveau homme juste avant des prochaines élections. Je sais, il dit, que la vie est misérable au Canada, que ça coûte trop cher, qu'il y a trop de crimes, que les gens ne peuvent pas trouver un logement, mais c'est un homme changé. On n'a pas besoin d'avoir le premier ministre qui change, on a besoin de changer le premier ministre. Il nous faut un premier ministre de gros bon sens. J'ai déjà dit que la crise de logement a été en partie causée par le fait que Justin Trudeau lance des milliards de dollars à travers le pays aux politiciens et bureaucrates incompétents qui bloquent le logement et qui ont contribué au doublement des prix. J'ai dit ça il y a 2 ans et j'avais raison et je le répète parce que c'est plus important pour moi qu'une mère monoparentale peut payer ses factures que d'être poli aux autres politiciens. C'est plus important que les aînés peuvent rester dans leur maison parce qu'il nous faut dire la vérité. C'est ça le gros bon sens. Un gouvernement conservateur va éliminer les taxes sur l'essence que Justin Trudeau et le Bloc imposent. Je vais contrôler les dépenses, équilibrer le budget pour éliminer l'inflation et permettre des taux d'intérêt de réduire. On va couper les impôts pour que le travail redevienne payant. On va inciter des municipalités d'accélérer la construction en signant un nouveau entente avec des municipalités qui donnent davantage d'argent fédéral aux municipalités qui permettent plus de construction et en donnant des pénalités à ceux qui bloquent le logement. On va mettre fin au système de libération automatique pour mettre des vrais criminels récidivistes en prison. Et au lieu de gaspiller l'argent en harcelant les chasseurs avec des interdictions d'armes d'épaule, on va mettre l'argent dans la frontière pour empêcher les armes d'entrer dans le pays et d'empêcher les autos volées de sortir du pays. On va lier nos nombres d'étudiants étrangers, travailleurs étrangers et de croissance de population au nombre de maisons bâties pour qu'on ajoute des maisons et appartements plus rapidement qu'on ajoute à la population. C'est ça le gros bon sens. Il nous faut un nouveau premier ministre de gros bon sens pour le faire et c'est ce que je vais livrer pour tous les Canadiens. Thank you very much. Before I get started, I want to talk about the terrible existential crisis to the entire universe, which of course is pizza ovens. I know that Prime Minister Trudeau and his federal agency have launched an outright crusade against pizza ovens. They've started in Montreal, but we know that they will get out here to Vancouver. So Vancouverites who are locked in their homes and terrified of pizza ovens should be at ease that Justin Trudeau will come to your rescue. Don't worry about your 100% rent increase or the fact that you can't feed yourself. Justin Trudeau is spending your money going after pizza ovens here and everywhere, and he will not stop until this crisis is resolved. But he's in a retreat today in more than one way. Yes, there's the expensive retreat of Liberal ministers who are coming together to pat themselves on the back and spend your money on luxury for themselves. No, it's not just that he's back from vacation, having spent $86,000 of other people's money on himself. He's in retreat in another way. He's retreating on everything he has done over the last 8 years, right? After 8 years of Trudeau, life costs more, work doesn't pay, housing costs have doubled, crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder are common in our streets, and he divides to distract from all that he has broken. Justin Trudeau is not worth the cost. And now he wants you to know he's a changed man. He's not the same Justin Trudeau of the last 8 years. He's going to be completely different. He's in retreat. After 2 years of me warning about the inflation crisis, his deficits and money printing were causing, he admits that things cost too much. After me warning that his massive carbon tax would drive millions of people to food banks, he now gives a pause and retreats on that as well. After my warnings that him giving money, billions of dollars, to incompetent local bureaucracies and mayors to block housing construction, that we would have a crisis, he admits that the crisis is real and claims that he's changed his approach and mind on that as well. After my warnings that if you let out repeat violent and property criminals again and again on early bail and parole and have weak borders, that we would lose cars to theft, he now admits that that is a problem too, and he's going to hold a big summit to talk about it. And after he spent 8 years ruining our immigration system, a system that was the best in the world, a system that brought my brilliant and beautiful wife here, he now admits that he screwed that up too, and he is retreating on that by cutting back by over 150,000 the number of international students. This is a problem of his own making. His own incompetent minister, Sean Fraser, was the one that allowed the program to grow, in the words of another Liberal minister, out of control. So you have 16 people crammed into basements in Brampton. You have housing costs rising faster than at any time in Canadian history and anywhere else in the world. You have what the Liberals now admit were fake and phony colleges for which Liberals were the ones that issued the study permits. Now they tell you they've changed their mind, and Justin Trudeau is a new man. He admits now that he was wrong on inflation, housing, immigration, and crime. He wants you to forget the last 8 years and elect him as a brand new man. We don't need the Prime Minister to change. We need to change the Prime Minister. We need a common sense, conservative Prime Minister who will axe the tax to bring home lower prices, cap spending, and cut waste to balance the budget, bringing down inflation and interest rates, lower income taxes so people bring home more powerful paychecks and hard work pays off, that we link federal infrastructure dollars for each city to the number of homes they allow to get built, so that we reward those who get out of the way and let builders build, and penalize those that block new construction. We need to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build, build, build. We want those homes to be in safe neighborhoods. So we need jail and not bail, jail and not bail, jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders and other criminals who have terrorized our streets. We need treatment, not decriminalize crack and heroin, to bring order and safety to our communities. And we need a Prime Minister that puts the people ahead of the government. That is the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Now, let's bring it home.
Thanks so much. We'll now take a few questions from the floor.
Hello. My first question might not be the easiest for a politician to answer, but this is Rebel News, and I'm Drea Humphrey. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
In 2021, the Tecumseh-Secwépemc First Nation Band government said that they found the remains of 215 children who were former students of the former Kamloops Indian Residential School. The reality is that to date, not a single body has been discovered. The band government itself has revised the wording of their claim to say that it's 200 probable graves, no mention of specific children anymore. And the only way to know what's actually beneath the soil would be to excavate, which the band government has not done in 2.5 years to date. Meanwhile, in Canada, 96 churches have been burnt or vandalized across the country since that initial claim was made. Many of the fires are proven arsons, and the vandals often leave messages that tie to the initial 215 kids' claim buried in unmarked graves. My question is, why, just like the leftist media, the NDP, the Liberal government, are the Conservatives also so quiet about this truth and good news, which is that to date 215 children's remains have not been discovered there, when that truth coming from political leaders could potentially help set free Christian Canadians from attacks on their places of worship?
Thank you for your question. I would disentangle two parts, because there is no justification for burning down a church, period. Regardless of the other information or regardless of the other justifications that people would claim to use, there is never a justification to burn down a church. And we as Conservatives have called for stronger criminal sanctions for arson against all who carry out these attacks. We've also called for more security infrastructure around places of worship so that we can stop terrorists who burn down churches, who attack mosques and synagogues. Unfortunately, these crimes against religious communities have raged out of control after 8 years of Justin Trudeau's catch and release system, after he has divided our country and turned people and groups against each other. We have more violence directed against religious groups, including Christians, than we have ever seen in Canadian history. This is the result of Justin Trudeau. He is not worth the cost, he is not worth the crime, and he is not worth the country that we know and love. And we should provide the resources to allow for full investigation into the potential remains at residential schools. Canadians deserve to know the truth, and Conservatives will always stand in favor of historical accuracy. None of this changes the fact that the residential schools were an appalling abuse of power by the state and by the church at the time. And we need to move forward in a country that is free so that every single Canadian, whether their ancestry goes back tens of thousands of years or whether they have been here for 10 days, has the freedom to live their life and in prosperity and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Georgie Smythe, CBC News. Do you believe it's the right move for the federal government to cap the number of international students arriving in Canada for the next 2 years? And would you do the same? I'm looking for an answer in English and French, please.
Yes, we. The question is, how did we get into this mess? We didn't, most Canadians didn't even know there was an international student program 8 years ago because it was so peaceful. They might have seen students happily walking off to class who were from another country, but we didn't think it was a problem because it wasn't. It worked. We had the most successful immigration system in the history of the world here in Canada. There are nations around the world that come to study how we got it so right for so long. And then along came Justin Trudeau, and through his total incompetence and irresponsibility, through his endless and nauseating virtue signaling, has destroyed that common sense consensus on immigration. Immigrants, international students, and temporary foreign workers are not to blame for his incompetence. He is to blame. He is the one that caused this mess. He is the one that brought hundreds of thousands of people here without homes, to cram 16 or 17 into a one-bedroom or basement apartment. He is the one that granted the the study permits. That is a federal responsibility. He and Sean Fraser granted the study permits for tens of thousands of students to come and go to fake colleges that the Liberal government now admits were, quote, puppy mills. He did that. So let's not blame the students. Let's not blame other levels of government. Let's blame the one man who is responsible for this disaster, and that is our incompetent Prime Minister. Can you think of anything he hasn't screwed up? Like, seriously, it has been, we never had 2 million people at a food bank. Sure, we always had people who struggled. 2 million people at a food bank? We never had a 100% increase in housing costs in 8 years. We never had middle-class carpenters living in parking lots. We never had 30 homeless encampments in Halifax all at once. And we never had the division and the chaos in our immigration system before Justin Trudeau, which proves once again he is not worth the cost. He is not worth the country we know and love.
French.
Oui, évidemment, il faut limiter le nombre d'étudiants étrangers parce qu'on n'a pas la capacité d'accueil et le système est en chaos total selon ce que les libéraux ont avoué. Le ministre actuel dit que le système est hors de contrôle. Ça n'a jamais été le cas avant Justin Trudeau. C'est lui qui a décidé de massivement augmenter les chiffres jusqu'à un niveau où, maintenant, les libéraux doivent avouer que ça augmente le coût de logement. Ça a forcé 16 personnes de vivre dans un seul appartement et ça a permis des dizaines de milliers d'étudiants avec des permis fédéraux d'aller étudier au collège qui n'existent vraiment pas, qui sont fraudulents. Ça n'a pas été un problème avant Justin Trudeau. Avant Justin Trudeau, il y a eu un consensus de gros bon sens parmi tous les politiciens municipaux, provinciaux, fédéraux, libéraux, conservateurs. On était tous d'accord que le système était le meilleur au monde avant lui. Mais maintenant, selon les mots de son ministre de l'Immigration, il y a le chaos total dans le système. C'est hors de contrôle. Et je cite, est-ce qu'on peut trouver quelque chose qui n'a pas ruiné? On n'a jamais eu 2 millions de personnes qui avaient besoin de d'aller à une banque alimentaire dans un seul mois avant Justin Trudeau. On n'avait pas des charpentiers qui vivaient dans leur voiture avant de Justin Trudeau. On n'avait pas une 100% augmentation de 100% dans les crimes de fusil avant Justin Trudeau. On n'avait pas cette division et cette incompétence et chaos dans notre système d'immigration de Justin Trudeau. C'est pour ça qu'il nous faut un nouveau gouvernement basé sur le gros bon sens. Merci.
Thank you. Next question.
Hello. A month and a half ago or so, it was revealed that the BC office here at CSIS was a toxic workplace for women especially. It's resulted in lawsuits and a workplace culture assessment. And I'm wondering what the reaction you had when those allegations came out publicly, and I'm wondering what a Conservative government would do to improve the working conditions at places like CSIS, at places like the RCMP and the military that have been rocked by these scandals in the years past.
It starts at the top. Justin Trudeau has created a toxic environment right across this country. Remember, it was Justin Trudeau that elbowed a woman in the breast on the floor of the House of Commons, that tried to grab a fellow MP by the arm and drag him down the aisle because he wasn't happy at the pace of a vote happening. It was Justin Trudeau that fired the first Indigenous Attorney General, a proud woman. Why? Because she exposed that he was trying to get her to drop charges on a corrupt Liberal-linked multinational corporation that had robbed over $1 million from the poorest people in Africa. And what did he do? I know, and it starts at the top. And I know, look, CBC never wants Justin Trudeau, the big boss, to be held accountable for his conduct. Same thing. Your Canadian press, your biggest client is CBC, right? You're not sure. I think you're sure. I think you are sure. And I think you know that Justin Trudeau is the head of the government, and the CSIS is part of the government. So I know every time CP writes a story about the latest screw-up in our country, they forget to mention who's the Prime Minister, right? So here's the reality. Justin Trudeau is the head of the government. CSIS is part of the government. If there's a toxic culture in CSIS, it's because the head of the government has caused that toxic culture. And he's done it by setting the example, by mistreating women in his cabinet, in the parliament, in the public service, by dividing one group of Canadians against another, and turning the people against each other within the government and within our society. And that's why after 8 years of Trudeau, there's a toxic workplace at CSIS. There's toxic divisions right across our country. What we need is a common sense government that will hold abusers accountable for how they mistreat fellow employees, and bring in a professional workplace, which we always had in Canada's public service before Justin Trudeau. By the way, I find it incredible that CSIS officials have been leaking about foreign interference in our politics, probably because Justin Trudeau has tried to manipulate the intelligence and cover it up. And that could be contributing to the toxic workplace environment that exists at CSIS and the similar stories we've seen at the RCMP and across the government after 8 years of Justin Trudeau.
Thank
you.
Thank you. We're just going to move on to this question, the next question here.
Hi, CBC again. Melanie Joly said this morning her statement is her statement and wouldn't elaborate further on whether what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. How adequate is that in terms of clarifying Canada's position? English and French as well, please.
Which position?
She did not elaborate further. That's all I can give you, I'm afraid.
Well, I have to figure out which position I'm to comment on, because Justin Trudeau has many different positions on the question that you raised. What he's done is very cynical. He's divided the country again. So he gets a block of MPs to go out to mosques and say that Israel has committed a genocide. And then he gets another group of Liberal MPs to go to synagogues and say that it's totally outrageous to suggest that Israel has committed a genocide. And he sits in the middle of the two and gives incomprehensible statements. You would need a linguist with a PhD and a magnifying glass to figure out the garble that comes out of the foreign minister and the prime minister on this question, because they're deliberately giving answers that no one can comprehend. He's divided the country on this just like every other issue. The reality is there is a genocide being carried out by Hamas. I don't have to accuse Hamas of committing genocide. They admit it. They proudly brag about it. It's in their charter. They have announced that as soon as the conflict ends, if they're still in power, they will relaunch another October 7th style attack with the purpose of eliminating all Jews from the Middle East, and they frankly would love to eliminate Jews from the rest of the world. This is a genocidal, homicidal, sadistic death cult. And everything I have just said are things that Hamas admits to. So it's time for the Prime Minister to grow a backbone, stop trying to divide Canadians based on religion and ethnicity, and take a principled stand in favor of humanity and against the real propagators of genocide, who are the Hamas terrorists.
And in French, if possible.
Et Justin Trudeau essaie de diviser le pays entre deux groupes. Il a deux positions. Et ça dépend où il est. Il a un groupe de députés qui vont dans les mosquées pour accuser Israël de génocide. Il y a un autre groupe de députés qu'il envoie dans les synagogues pour dire exactement le contraire, essayant de tromper les deux groupes et de mentir à tout le monde. Et au centre, on a le premier ministre et sa ministre des Affaires étrangères qui prononcent des déclarations que les gens ne peuvent même pas comprendre. C'est une tentative de diviser le pays pour régner encore. Il y a un génocide et les criminels, les vrais terroristes qui font le génocide, c'est Hamas. Hamas avoue sa volonté de faire un génocide contre le peuple juif en Moyen-Orient et à travers le monde. C'est même dans leur charte. Ils ont dit que l'instant qu'ils ont la capacité de refaire les attaques d'octobre 7, ils vont le faire. Donc, le Premier ministre devrait être en train d'accuser Hamas de génocide. Il devrait finalement parler avec une voix claire en faveur de la vérité et contre les terroristes et le vrai génocide.
Thank you. This will be the final question.
Thank you.
Drea Humphrey again with Rebel News. In the past several times, you have denounced the World Economic Forum, and you've made it clear to pledge that if your party forms government, you will ban your cabinet ministers from being involved with the World Economic Forum. Yet, I'm also aware of many Canadians who applaud you for saying that, but also have reservations on whether or not the claim is authentic because they see images of your name being on the World Economic Forum site, and also because you worked closely with former MP John Baird, who at one point was a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader in a campaign. So my question for clarification purposes, for those concerned about foreign globalist organizations potentially encroaching on our nation's sovereignty, does your pledge to ban cabinet ministers from being associated with or involved with the WEF expand to those you hire as staff as well as advisors?
Yes. No staff, no ministers, no MPs in my caucus will be involved whatsoever in that organization. It is a group of high-flying, high-tax, high-carbon hypocrites who all got on their private jets to fly off to a remote ski village where they talked about how working-class people should not be allowed to heat their homes or drive their pickup trucks. I'm not going to work for a group of globalist billionaires who serve their own interests at the expense of everyone else. And I'd like to specifically point out Mark Carney. Here he was celebrating the central banks who caused the inflation by printing trillions of dollars so that people like multimillionaires like him could have their asset values inflated, while the purchasing power of working class people and seniors was wasted away by inflation, a massive wealth transfer from the have-nots to the have-yachts. A common-sense conservative government will bring home control of our democracy to this country, and it's not just on that issue. We will ban the IRGC to end the interference of the 700 agents that are operating in this country on behalf of the terrorist regime in Tehran, and that's according to Global News. We will shut down foreign-controlled police stations. We will bring in a foreign influence registry. We will bring home control of our democracy, and we'll make this a country that works for its people, the common people, and the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Thank you.